Oh, I love this number 5. Forget about school timelines and charts, developmental, charts.
Yes.
And not the rewards and all that stuff, but we're talking about getting I as a consultant, I always got, how do I get my child caught up? And it was like one of the least favorite questions I liked getting, because you have to tell a parent there's no catching up. Who are you catching up with?
Right.
And so, can you explain a little bit more about, how to do that?
Sure. Well, I think that if you take a look around us, not even just in the school setting, but everywhere in society, we're just obsessed with timelines. Your child should be doing this by 18 months. Your child should be doing this by 2 years. Your child should be doing this by 3 years. In school, if they're not doing things by a certain time, it's not because there is anything wrong with that particular child. The issue with that in school is because they need to keep everybody moving at the same pace.
Right.
But
exactly.
Yes, but and we as parents don't realize that. And teachers don't tell you that either, at least not the ones that I've had with my kids. They've never said to me, there's nothing wrong with your child. It's just that we need to try to keep everyone together. What they have said to me with my oldest son was they wanted him to repeat, I think it was 2nd grade, because they said that he was not reading on the proper timeline. And I refused to let him repeat. And then 4 years later, they tested him for the gifted program, and it was just, they don't explain those things to you. And I think that it's so important that we parents need to remember that, God has created us as individuals. He has created our children to be individuals, and they are not cookie cutter images of one another. And just because one child is doing one thing at a certain age does not mean that your child has to. And they all have their own strengths, their own abilities, and school especially. And again, we bring that whole mentality into homeschool because that's what we grew up with. School embraces certain talents, certain abilities, and kind of, pushes everything else to the side. And there are so many things that kids are good at outside of school that are not recognized. And I think, so for example, if you have one child who excels at sports, there are often times that they might be a little bit behind in their reading or a little bit behind with their fine motor skills. And I have noticed this is because no child, at least no child that I've ever met, is going to absolutely have it all. There are going to be, some areas in their life, they're going to have to get up to certain levels. But the only reason that school has that timeline is to keep everybody together. When you're homeschooling your kids, you need to embrace your children and just give them the freedom to learn at their own pace. Because if you push them ahead of their time, they're going to hate learning. And I know this from experience. One of my daughters, when I pulled them out of school the second time, I was really, really pushing her about reading and just pushing because I thought she wasn't I thought she wasn't where she should be, and she would cry. And I look back on that now and I feel so bad that I did that. And it was just because I didn't have that. It was very hard for me to get rid of that mentality, of that kids are different and that's okay. And actually, you were saying that you get that in your consultancy. And I actually, someone just asked me, I think in one of the comments on one of my videos, they said, I just pulled my child out of school and they're in 6th grade, but they're at a 4th grade level. How can I homeschool my child and get my child back up to a 6th grade level? And I didn't answer the comment yet because I don't think that I'm going to tell them what they're expecting,
Yes, and that's unfortunate that, I always talk about learning plateaus. Kids have learning plateaus. They will have to sometimes develop a whole nother skill in order to increase the skill of what they're doing in reading or math. And then all of a sudden that one experience, so that one other thing that they do there will jump them up to the next one. It doesn't mean that nothing's going on. And, so frustrating the child in that process when they can't force themselves to move forward doesn't help
Right.
anything at all. And usually that's how I explain it. You know, I worked both as a special needs consultant for 2 different state organizations before we started this organization. So yeah, I've been on the other side of the phone with many parents, and you try to navigate those questions lightly, just because changing your mindset from that schooling to looking at school more eclectically, it takes a while.